I've been asking the same question my whole life. Not, does God exist? I got past that a long time ago. My question was deeper than that. Why does any of this exist at all? Why a universe? Why humanity? Why me? And then one night, I stopped reading about the Bible, and I actually read it, from the very first word. And what I found shook me. This is not a children's story. This is the most epic, terrifying, beautiful account of reality ever written. Let me take you back, not just to the beginning of time, but before time even had a name. Before we talk about what God made, we have to talk about what existed before He made anything, and the answer is almost impossible for the human mind to hold. Nothing. Not empty space, because space didn't exist yet. Not silence, because silence is just the absence of sound, and sound requires air, and air requires a world, and there was no world. Not even darkness, not the way we understand darkness, because darkness is what happens when light is absent, and light hadn't been created yet either. There was simply nothing. No time, no matter, no energy, no dimension, no direction, no up or down, no before or after. Nothing. Except God. And then God spoke. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. 10 words in English, 7 in Hebrew. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. The very first sentence ever written about the very first moment that anything ever happened. And notice, the Bible doesn't argue for God's existence. It doesn't open with a philosophical proof or a theological debate. It simply begins, in the beginning, God. As if to say, before you ask any other question, understand this one thing first. He was already there. He has always been there. And everything starts with Him. The earth, the scripture tells us, was without form and void. The Hebrew words are tohu vavohu, chaos, emptiness, formlessness, a blank canvas, a lump of unworked clay. And the Spirit of God, Ruach Elohim, was hovering over the face of the waters. That word hovering is the same word used for a mother eagle hovering over her nest, protective, attentive, about to move. And God opened His mouth. Let there be light. And there was light. No delay, no negotiation. The moment God spoke, reality obeyed. The Hebrew word here is bara, a creative act that only God can perform. He doesn't sculpt from existing material. He calls something from nothing. And the first thing He creates isn't a star or a mountain. It's light itself, before the sun even exists. We need to sit in that mystery. God separates waters above from waters below, creating sky, atmosphere, space. This is God bringing order to chaos. The ancient Hebrew mind saw the deep waters as representing chaos and danger. God is taming the untamable. He is not frightened by the chaos. He simply speaks, and it organizes itself. Dry land emerges, then immediately vegetation. The earth begins to produce. This is the first time creation participates in creation. God builds systems that generate life on their own. He doesn't place every leaf by hand. He builds a world that knows how to make more world. That is worth marveling at. Here is where it gets theologically fascinating. The sun and moon are created after light. The ancient world worshipped the sun as a god. Genesis, quietly, radically, says the sun is just a lamp God hung up. It marks time. It serves. It is not divine. God is not one of the lights in the sky. He made the lights in the sky. There's a difference that changes everything. The oceans and skies burst into life, and for the first time God speaks a blessing over His creatures. He wants them to flourish. This is not a cold, mechanical universe. There is affection here. There is a God who looks at what He has made and says, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. I want more of you." The land animals come first, and then the narrative slows down, almost like the camera zooms in. God pauses and says something He has never said before, something He will never say about anything else.
"Let us make mankind in our image." Of everything God made, only one thing was made to look like him. Only one thing was made to carry his image into the world. That thing is you. God rests, not because he's tired, he is God, but because he is declaring something sacred. He sanctifies a day. He builds rest into the architecture of reality itself. And this is the first thing in all of Scripture that God calls holy, not a temple, not a mountain, not a river or a tree or a golden altar, a moment in time. God looked at everything he had made, and the Scripture says it was not just good, it was very good. The only time in the entire creation account God uses that word, very, as if even God himself stepped back and marveled at what love had built. Before we even meet Adam, Genesis does something cinematically fascinating. It rewinds. Chapter 1 was the wide shot, the cosmic view, God speaking galaxies into existence. Chapter 2 zooms in, gets close to the ground, and it tells us something striking. Before any plant had grown, before any herb had sprouted, there was a reason. There was no man to work the ground, like a stage fully built but empty of actors. Everything is prepared, but for whom? This is one of the most intimate verses in all of Scripture. God, the same God who spoke light into existence, who hung the stars like lanterns, now leans down. He reaches into the dust of the ground. The Hebrew word is afar, dry earth, clay, dirt, common, ordinary. And he forms man. The Hebrew word is yatsar, the word used for a potter shaping clay. This is not a distant cosmic command. This is hands-on, personal, intimate. He shapes the body, every bone, every curve of the spine, every fold of the ear. And then, and this is breathtaking, God leans in close and breathes into his nostrils. The Hebrew word is nishmat chaim, the breath of life. The same breath that is in God goes directly into this creature made of dust, and the dust wakes up. Adam opens his eyes for the first time. The first thing he ever sees is the face of God looking back at him. God plants a garden eastward in Eden. The word Eden in Hebrew means delight. God builds Adam a home designed for pleasure, beauty, and abundance. God gives Adam his first assignment, to tend and keep the garden. The Hebrew words are abad and shamar, to work, to serve, to guard, to protect. Adam was not a passive resident. He was a steward, a caretaker. Work was not a curse. Work was worship. Then God gives the one boundary, one single rule in an entire paradise of freedom. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die.
If you have watched this far, why not click on the like button, subscribe, and turn on your notification button so you'll get notified when I upload a new video. So let's continue with the story. This is important. Adam receives this command before Eve ever exists. He is the one who carries the weight of it first. Up until this point in Genesis, every time God creates something, he steps back and says, "It is good, 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 good." And then, suddenly, for the first time in all of creation, God says something is not good. It is not good for man to be alone. Read that slowly. In the middle of a perfect paradise with God himself present, surrounded by beauty and abundance and purpose, God looks at Adam and says, this is not enough for him. He needs someone. The Hebrew says, Ezer Kenegdo, a helper who is his equal, his counterpart, his mirror, someone who is the same kind of thing he is. God had said it himself, it is not good for man to be alone. But before he would provide the answer, he let Adam feel the question. Because some things you have to discover yourself before you can truly receive what God is about to give you. God brought every living creature to Adam, every beast of the field, every bird of the air, and he gave Adam something no other creature had, the power to name. A name in the ancient world wasn't just a label, a name was an identity, a declaration of what something is. And God, the creator of all things, stood back and let a man speak names over his creation.
The lion passed before him, and he named it. The eagle circled overhead, and he named it. Every creature, every kind, each one came in two, male and female, side by side. And with every pair that passed, the silence inside Adam grew louder. Because for every creature there was another like it, a companion, a counterpart, someone to walk beside. But when the last creature had been named and the garden grew quiet again, Adam looked around and there was no one. But for Adam there was not found a helper comparable to him. Not in all of creation. Adam was the only being on earth who was truly alone. And God saw it. He saw the loneliness. He saw the searching in Adam's eyes as the last animal walked away. And God moved. Not with words this time, not with a command spoken into the darkness. This time, God came close. He caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam. The Hebrew word is tardima, not just sleep, a supernatural, God-given sleep, deep, peaceful, safe. And while Adam slept, God reached in. He took one of Adam's ribs, closed up the flesh. God didn't form Eve from the dust of the ground the way he formed Adam. He didn't reach down to the earth. He reached into Adam himself. She was taken from his side, not from his head to rule over him, not from his feet to be beneath him, but from his side to stand beside him, close to his heart, under his arm, protected, equal, cherished. This was not an accident of biology. This was a statement. God was building into the very origin of woman what her worth would always be. And the scripture says God built the rib into a woman. The Hebrew word is banah, to build, to construct. The same word used for building a house, a temple, something meant to last, something meant to be inhabited, something meant to be home. God wasn't just making a companion for Adam. He was building a covenant. He was laying the foundation of the first family that would ever exist. Adam woke up, and God brought her to him. I want you to sit with that image for a moment. God walking Eve to Adam, like a father presenting his daughter. The first wedding procession in the history of the world. And there was no aisle, no flowers arranged by human hands, just Eden, just God, just two people seeing each other for the first time. And Adam, this man who had just named every creature in creation, who had the right word for everything, he opens his mouth, and what comes out is not a name, it's a cry of recognition. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. In Hebrew, Isha from Ish, woman from man. This is the first recorded human speech in Scripture, and it's a love poem. Not a command, not a statement of ownership, a declaration of belonging. He wasn't saying, she is mine. He was saying, I recognize her. She is from me. She is like me. She is the answer to everything I didn't even know how to ask for. And then the scripture pauses to say something important, something God wanted written into the foundation of every marriage that would ever come after this one. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. One flesh. Not one opinion, not one personality, one flesh. A unity so deep it mirrors the unity within God himself. This is what marriage was always supposed to be. Not a contract, not a convenience, not a cultural tradition, a covenant, designed by God, performed by God, witnessed by God, in a garden that God planted for exactly this moment. They were both naked, Adam and his wife, and they were not ashamed. Don't read that too quickly. In our world, nakedness means vulnerability, exposure, the fear of being fully seen and found wanting. But here, in this moment, there was nothing to hide. No pretense, no performance, no masks. They stood before each other and before God, completely open, completely known, completely unafraid. This is what innocence looks like. This is what it means to live before shame ever existed. Pure, open, free. Try to imagine what their days were like. No alarm clocks, no anxiety, no deadlines, no arguments born out of insecurity or fear, no wondering if they were enough, no questioning if they were loved. Every morning they woke up in the most beautiful place that has ever existed on this earth. Every tree in the garden was theirs, every river, every creature. The whole world was their home, and God had handed them the keys. They worked, yes. God had given them the garden to tend and keep, but this was not the grinding, exhausting, frustrating labor we know today. This was the joy of purpose, the satisfaction of doing exactly what you were made to do in exactly the place you were made to do it. And every evening, every single evening, God came. He walked in the garden in the cool of the day, and he talked with them, face to face, voice to voice, creator and creation in perfect, unbroken fellowship. No distance, no silence, no searching for God and wondering if he's there. He was simply there. This was paradise, not just a beautiful location, a state of being, a condition of the human soul that has never been fully recovered since what happened next. Because in the middle of all this perfection, there was one thing, one boundary, one single rule in an entire paradise of freedom. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. One tree out of every tree in Eden, just one. And God wasn't being cruel. He wasn't setting a trap. He was doing something far more profound than that. He was giving them a choice. Because love without choice is not love at all. It's programming. It's mechanics. God didn't want robots in his garden. He wanted relationship. And relationship requires the freedom to choose otherwise and to choose not to. And for a time, they chose well. They tended the garden. They walked with God. They lived in the freedom of innocence, and it was enough. The garden was enough. Each other was enough. God was enough. Everything was exactly as it was meant to be. Paradise wasn't just a place they lived in. It was a place they were. It lived inside them, in their peace, in their wholeness, in the way they looked at each other without a single shadow between them. This is what God had always intended for the human race. Not survival, not struggle, not religion and rituals and desperate prayers into the silence. This, closeness, clarity, communion, walking with God in the cool of the evening like it was the most natural thing in the world, because it was. This was the original design, the blueprint, the factory setting of what it means to be human. And God looked at all of it, at Adam and Eve, at the garden, at everything he had made, and it was not just good. The scripture says it was very good. The only time in the entire creation account God uses that word, very. As if even God himself stepped back and marveled at what love had built.
But paradise is not where this story ends, because there was something else in that garden, something that had not yet spoken, something that was watching, waiting, patient in the way that the most dangerous things are patient, and one day it would slither into the most ordinary moment of the most perfect life two people had ever lived, and it would ask a question, just one question. And that question would change everything. Everything. But that is chapter 2.
Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Ensure you do well to like, subscribe, and share this video to your loved ones. Thanks.